Welcome to Truth in Food, Chef's Classes. Rye bread, Scandinavian style with real rye. We need to mix the rye bread. We have our starter, we have our water, salt. I have roasted barley here that we're gonna color it with a little bit. We have the rye beets. You don't have to have rye beets. You can buy rye flour, buy a good quality rye flour, organic. You can buy this as a powder, some places in the health store. But I like to grind it. It gets a little more flavor, it holds longer time. I'm gonna soak the rye beets first because they have to sit the same amount of time, 12 hours, as the dough has to rise overnight. So I'm gonna measure here, make sure that is zeroed. 400 grams of rye beet. I'm gonna fill that up with 800 grams or 700 to 800 grams of water. So we need to measure up the rye beets again to make the flour. We're gonna grind 600 grams and we're gonna grind 200 grams. The 200 grams we will save for tomorrow when the bread has been resting overnight. We're gonna mix it together with the soaked rye beets. So we're gonna grind both of them, but it's easier to just grind the 600 and then the 200 afterwards. And then in the 600 we want a little color, so I just take like 2 spoons or 1.5 spoons to just get a little color, and that's it. Of the roasted barley. This is roasted barley. It gives this dark color to it, or a little more like barley has a little more rounded taste to it, a little more nutty taste when it gets roasted. Instead of putting beer in, you can also put like a really dark beer in it. So the most important thing with your grinder is that you wanna like turn it on slowly when you have to put something in it first. So slowly here. It cannot hold it all. See how dusty it's already getting? I like to put the ball, this one I'm using the big bowl here, upside down, and then I put a bowl on top, so I lift it up so it doesn't have flour all over. Turn it on slowly first in the beginning, on 1. And then you can turn it up. It cannot go full speed, it can go all the way up to 5, I think. So I have it like, medium sized going through. And then I cover this up to not get all the dust. So, we grinded the flour. Now we want to mix it all together. It's water, sourdough, flour, and salt. The beets are here tomorrow in the water, the rye beets, and the rye flour, the 200 grams of rye flour, we're going to mix in tomorrow after it's been sitting for 12 hours. 700 grams of water, 300 grams of your sourdough. Remember, you fed it the day before you're using it, so you have to feed it the day before so it rises up. I don't know if you can see it, but it's getting really, this one is not gonna float. Oh, it actually is floating. So the floating part of it is a good trick if you can get it to float. That means it has a lot of oxygen in it. That means it's processing a lot of gases, and these gases will keep it afloat. Remember, this is a new starter. Your starter will change, so we will save 300 grams and put back in a new jar with this in, and then you have your starter that can keep on growing. And every time you're baking the bread, you need to save 300 grams and put it back into, so you'll keep it and you can keep it forever. You can actually, some people keep them for like 100 years and say, oh, this is why the starter is so great. But actually, you can start your starter within a week and then you have the same quality. So we added the water and then we added the sourdough, the sourdough starter, and then we're gonna add the flour. You see some of the parts were really dark there. That was the roasted barley. Salt, you want to put like 35 grams. And it just goes in with everything. If you have a mixer, put this dough, I don't know what's it called, dough arm or whatever. It's a good mixture for rye bread. Get your arm in here, secure that, lift it up and slowly mix it. The good part about this is when you slowly mix it, scrape off the arm and scrape all the sides down. You can put cling film on and leave it the 12 hours in this. And then you only have these 3 things you have to mix together tomorrow. So now everything is mixed. We're still waiting for the stuff for tomorrow to put in, and then we are like filming it and then let it rise overnight to tomorrow. So that's the only thing. I scrape everything down from the, you can see here. And then I'm just gonna put cling film on it. Like that. And then I'm gonna put this one on. And I'm just gonna keep it over here for like 12 hours. 12 hours later, this is the rye bread. It's been standing here and fermenting. We still need to give this more flour. It's too thin to bake. It'll be too much water in it. See the whole structure here? It's starting to make gases, or the fermenting is starting to work. We still need to give it a little more rye. We have 200 grams more rye that we're gonna mix it with. It's gonna suck up the rest of the moisture here, and then we're gonna put it into these baking molds. It's important that you don't get too much here on the sides because it will dry out, and when it dries out, it gets really, really hard like cement. So I always like to poke it down a little. Put it into my KitchenAid here. Put the steel arm in. Lift it up. And then I'll just put the 200 grams of the rye flour that we grinded yesterday in. Slowly mix it in. It's not really mixed in right. I always scrape down the sides so everything gets mixed in really good. We're gonna mix it in the end here before we put it in the trays. So. Has to be like a thick porridge. We're still gonna rest it for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, so we can see it's gonna rise again. We're gonna poke it so it falls down again, and then we're gonna bake it. It's a longer process to make a real rye bread, but in the end, tomorrow when you cut it and put cold butter on it, oh, it's so delicious. Take the hook out. Scrape it clean because we want as much as we can. I always make sure to like scrape everything from the sides down. Make sure it's mixed 100%. You want to have that mixture in it. So it looks like this. Scrape down. See, it's like sticky, but it's not like runny. It still like has a lot of moisture in it. We want to keep that moist in it because we want to have moist to the bread. It's very important. It will hold longer time. The drier a bread is, the shorter shelf life does it have. Baking trays, different kinds. This one has like a silicone layer inside. It's a little more professional one. This one you can probably buy. I like this one. I don't clean them out after been using. You can see here. I just like wash them off with a little water, let them dry. All the big stuff here will get better and better, and it will releases faster when you put the bread out. Poke the dough down. Oops. Poke the dough down. Get a good grip on it here, and then fill it up. You can fill it all the way. So you still have to have like 1 inch from the top. Then you want to poke it like this. I poke it in like it's gonna sit. It's like cement. See, I poke it in. So it's sitting. But make sure there's room here. We don't want it to raise all the way over this one. We don't want it to like bake. We want to have this square form of it. You see it's still a little runny. We'll set it, let it sit. We'll put it over here in a hot spot and on the oven here. When there's heat, you don't want to have a cool place because if it's too cold, the bread will not really rise. So we need to have it somewhere that's a good room temperature. So we will leave it here for 2 to 3 hours. If you have to keep an eye on it, put a timer on, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, and then go look at it. It has to rise up, but it cannot go over the top. If it goes over the top, you'll take a fork and you will poke some holes in. I will show it later. But sometimes it has a lot of yeast and the sourdough starter will start to rise because it's getting all this new energy in it. And we don't want it to like explode all over. So we want to keep a controlled eye on it. It's still alive. It varies from the starter. If the yeast in the air, the yeast in the rye that you use, did you meal it yourself or did you buy it used, the rye that you're using? You want to control it. It's always about looking and feeling. It's a learning process all the way. You cannot just make a sourdough bread. You need to learn how does it work. But it will take time. You have to bake multiple breads. This little leftover dough here, you can mix with chocolate, raisins, whatever you want to put in it, and then bake it for the kids. Fill it up like this. Especially if you put dark chocolate in it, it's so good. Like chocolate pieces, big pieces, or like small round dots in it, mix it and then bake it. It's phenomenal. So now the 2 hours has gone by and I can see we are rising pretty fast here. So now at this point I just want to make some small holes so the air can come out and the bread can get the steam out through or else it will just go up and break. Then I'm just going to make some small holes here like that. Poke, 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 poke. Poke it down a little. Because it will start rising again when it goes into the oven. It has to bake like 1.5 hours. Just want to make sure, and you stick it down like 1/2 inch down in the bread. I turned the oven down on 345. I'm gonna put the timer on for like an hour. So I put the oven on 345. I put an hour on. We're gonna check it in an hour's time. We're gonna check the temperature. It has to be at the temperature of 206, 7, 8 when we are finished. So if the oven is burning hotter, we need to check the temperature almost in the end. So we still have like 1/2 hour to run on when we are finished. So we're just gonna leave it. I'm gonna throw these small ones in here. They're probably gonna have like 45 minutes. I'm gonna throw those in the bottom here. So this is the small buns. I took them out like 45 to 50 minutes. Oh, it smells so good. I even just cut it in half and put butter on it and salt. Nicey, nicey. The rye bread have been in the oven for 1.5 hours. It has to get a temperature of 206 Fahrenheit. Did you have to paint it when you move out? No.
No.
The bread is finished. I gave it 10 more minutes, 2 times 5 more. It was because the temperature was 5 degrees lower. So 350, 1.5 hours should be perfect. Sometimes I let it sit for like 5 minutes. If it's not loose like you can hear here, you know, you can hear it's loose. Just 2.5 to 5 minutes. See how much steam that comes out here? You want to release that steam. So I measured the temperature, it was 206.7, so that was perfect. Now I just have to sit. Wow. It's really hot, okay? So don't burn your fingers, there's a lot of steam coming out of it. 2 to 3 hours, and then you can cut into it. If you cut into it now, it'll just be like falling apart. It has to sit. It's actually best if you can wrap it in a towel for tomorrow and then just leave it so it sucks up all that moisture that it's releasing right now. It keeps it in so this crust here doesn't get like stone hard. So you want to protect it, keep the moisture in it. This bread here will last at least 7 days, but you will eat it in 2. We're gonna pack it in this rag here, or cloth, like this. Keep it out, keep it like in a normal cold space like that, and it will sit perfectly to tomorrow. You can also put it in a plastic bag in this one. If your crust is too hot, it will soften up a little by the humid. We will just take a sneak peek in it and cut it open and see how's it looking, you know. So you will see the structure of those small holes here. Oh, it's getting good, it's good. It's actually ready to get cut. If you want to have a piece with butter and cheese, it will be better tomorrow. You can slice, see all that sitting on the knife here, you will not have the same way. But it's pretty moist, pretty dense. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Let's put some butter on it. Taste it. It's definitely better when it's been sitting a whole day. Yeah, it's good. Really good. You really get that sourdough rye bread taste into it. Velbekomme.